And well, hello there, and welcome to the first live stream of our Toronto. Thank you for joining. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the comments that you left on some of the videos. And we're going to start with the Eglinton LRT and just how big of a blunder it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to react to your comments for the video. So let's start, let me start by just going ahead here, playing the video. So I'm going to play that in the background first while I go through this. Alright, so let's take a look here. Okay, so the first comment was from Gary Harris, 2812. There should have been a subway. Toronto politicians have been too short-sighted. Yes, it should have been a subway. That is exactly what the whole point of that video was. I think that we're going to find out over time that the LRT is just not going to be worth the while for what we've spent on it, especially how over budget the entire thing is. Next we have David Aldinger. So before anything got started on getting this line under construction, there were those arguing that LRT was all Eglinton needed. Ridership projections were allegedly ridership projections were allegedly projecting ridership well within what was justified for LRT. Well, anyway, had the TTC gone with a full subway, I'm sure that there would have been criticism of that too. Well, see, the issue here is the cost, right? And that it just doesn't make sense to have an LRT there that is costing as much as a subway. The point here is that for the cost that we're paying for this LRT, we could have just had a subway. I don't think that ridership has really, or the population has increased that much around Eglinton, though. So it's kind of like we have the right mode of transit, which is an LRT, or I would even argue a BRT at this point right now, which I think would be sufficient. But I mean, looking ahead, like if we look ahead like 10-15 years, which is fair, yes, a subway would have made more sense. But really at the end of the day, again, we're just paying too much for an LRT. That isn't even open yet. So next we have Keith Hosanna, 3022, who wrote, just by walking on Eglinton in summer of 22, I thought that it was obvious that this LRT wouldn't be open in 2023, but at the time I never imagined it wouldn't be open by spring of 2025. Well, nobody did. I mean, it was supposed to be open in, I think, if I remember correctly, June of 2020, and it was delayed, which was understandable. I mean, nobody was making hay out of it at the time. You know, it's delayed for 6 months, a year and a half even. Okay, fine, we understand, but it's gone on for 5 years now, and it is a long time. Next is Mel Yandrick, who wrote, too late for this discussion. Well, I don't know about that, but okay, there's no way to undo what has been done and start again. Well, no, there's no way to undo what's been done. That is true, but there is the question of learning from mistakes, and there is the issue of holding people accountable for what happened. But I would really like to know who knew and went about. Yes, that's exactly my point. LRT disaster of construction. Olivia Chow and Doug Ford should simply walk on the construction site and ask the workers. Ultimately, they work for them and they don't work for us. Well, Olivia Chow has nothing to do with the project. If Olivia Chow walked down the LRT and asked people what's going on, they're not going to tell her anything. She's the mayor of Toronto. She has absolutely no power or control over the Eglinton LRT. It's run by Metrolinx, which is a provincial agency, and it's run by the province. Now, Doug Ford, on the other hand, Doug Ford doesn't need to walk down the construction site and ask the workers. I think that Doug Ford knows exactly what's going on with it and just doesn't want to tell us. So, two different things there. So next we have Christopher Jared, 1277. The math presented excludes the largest revenue point for the province and the city. The Ford government put in the 500-meter rule. meaning we have decades and billions of dollars of housing and commercial construction along this line with very little infrastructure costs when calculated on a per hour housing unit basis. This construction is already in progress all along the Eglinton line. The workers building thousands of housing units all pay taxes. Then the residents pay income and property taxes. This line will be the most profitable line we have constructed yet until the Ontario line is completed. I don't know. I'm not too sure about that. I mean, it's hard to say because there's a lot of metrics involved. I mean, it's at the end of the day really impossible to know. We can only make educated guesses about what something is actually worth and valued at. It really just depends on how it goes. Now, don't forget it hasn't even opened yet. But I'm not as optimistic about the Eglinton LRT. I think that we need an incredible amount of construction. And don't forget that this is a money management issue, right? We can have loads of more money coming into the city through property taxes along the line. And if government is not spending that efficiently, it makes no difference how much money will come in. Don't worry, they'll find they could find a way to spend it, which is what I'm worried about, and which is what I think people should be worried about here. So next we have Jimmy Juice Hockey. The level of corruption is way bigger than Canada. Totally deliberate incompetence. Follow the money if it doesn't make you too dizzy. Well, the problem is we can't follow the money. We can't follow the money because nobody's telling us where the money is going exactly. They basically asked us to write a $12 billion check, and they're not telling us why. If we could follow the money, we'd be doing that. But that's what's being hidden from us, and that's just not right. So next we have You Betcha 6880. So it's $12 billion only from Weston to Kennedy. They're needlessly building it largely underground west of Mississauga, and don't forget that the needlessly underground Scarborough subway is cock-blocking the crosstown eastern extension. Yep, stupid transit decision making in Toronto. Thanks, David Miller and Ford Brothers. I don't know. I think that the whole, I mean, needlessly underground, in a way, yes. At this point, I don't think the issue is, I don't think, I mean, you can go back and forth about whether it should be above ground, underground at this point. The biggest problem is that it's $12 billion sitting there being unused, and that it costs so much and it's being delayed. That's what the issue here is mainly. I don't think anybody would be complaining so much about whether it's above ground or underground if it were open and running. Hawktown Boy 1 writes, it was a subway, but Mike Harris hatred of New Democrats, he canceled the subway as it had been 30% built. Well, first of all, the subway wasn't 30% built. In the late 90s, when Harris did cancel the Eglinton subway, that was only that they only started tunneling and building the first station at Eglinton and Yonge, and they didn't go further than that. But it was ridiculous to cancel it. Mike Harris made a lot of mistakes, and we know that we're still paying for it. So next we have TWPRP. Crazy part is the vehicles will need to be replaced when the line opens. Well, that's another thing, right? I mean, you know, the vehicles, while they're not being used, are aging. And that is an issue as well. Essentially, the money that is currently invested into the line is in many ways a depreciating asset at this point, and so there is some truth to that. Ryan the Canuck Pirate writes, once this thing finally opens, I hope they make a Crave or something documentary about the construction of this thing from start to finish, what went wrong and who to blame. I think that will happen. I think that it will happen, but I think that it has to be pushed because there has to be political will. There's been some appetite at City Hall for an inquiry into the Eglinton LRT, and we'll just have to see what happens. Okay, so the next is Dylan Dirtle, who writes, cancel, no, hang on a second, I just gotta, give me a second here. I gotta put this on loop. Replay, and let me just put this on loop. There we go. Okay, so Dylan Dirtle writes, disasters all over the greater GTA area. So looking at Finch and the Hazel LRT, years overdue in ballooning costs. More commitments and additional routing being added to the Hazel LRT, even though it's already overdue and progress made to date isn't impressive. The additions are just going to extend out the construction of the line into the next decade. Yeah, that's the reality we're looking at right now. Seems like we have a lot under construction and not much being completed and built. Matt NW2TE writes, the mode isn't the issue, it was how it was implemented. I agree with that to a very big extent. No transit project in the history of Toronto has been built on time and on budget. All levels of government, especially the Ontario government, are to blame for this debacle. Yes. I mean, I don't think especially. I think that it is only the Ontario government that is to blame for this entire debacle. I mean, this has been in their hands the entire time. I mean, let's not forget that. Nouvel Costs writes, if Toronto had committed to a subway, it would have cost significantly less than what we ultimately spent on the LRT. The same way, the LRT cost estimates were far lower than the final price tag. There's no reason to believe that the same wouldn't have applied equally to a subway. There's nothing to suggest that the cost overruns had anything to do with... Hang on. Oh, wow, this is really long. Wow, this is a book. There's nothing to suggest that the cost overruns had anything to do with the technology, and instead was the complexity of creating the interchange at Yonge and Eglinton. That has been a big problem. Poor management, disputes with contractors, etc. Yeah, we don't really know what's going on there, but it's been under construction forever. Built, rebuilt, this mistake, that mistake, and so on. Yeah, okay, so if you started with the higher base price and increased it just as much because of those issues, then the final cost would be even higher. Very true. The other issue is the comparison between the LRT and subway assumes the subway would be carrying 3 times as many passengers. Well, no, I don't assume that. If you go watch the video, I did not assume that. I used the same metrics, right? At the end of the day, how much would a subway have cost? Well, okay, no, wait a second. No, I did assume that it would carry more passengers, but that assumption is made on the fact that the city will grow and capacity will increase. So I don't think that it's an unfair assumption to make that eventually the subway would have been carrying more people for that reason. I think that we've really capped ourselves with this LRT, and I think that we're going to find that it was a very short-sighted decision. If there were a subway, in the video, what I was alluding to is that if assuming that the city is going to grow and the capacity on the line will grow, which I think it will, and I don't think anybody ought to be arguing that it won't, that it wouldn't have been worth to build the subway in this case. And I don't think I'm wrong about that. The existing subways are not counting the current condition with slow zones. Average is about 32 kilometers an hour, while the LRT is expected to average about 27 kilometers an hour. Yes, but don't forget the LRT is running not in traffic, of course. It is in its own lane, but it will still have it will still be running with traffic lights, etc. I think the subways are still faster overall than the LRT. So the subway would be about 19% faster overall. So if actually, you'd be surprised. 19% is no small difference. I mean, think about 19%. I mean, think of all the people. Think about how much time you spend on transit. Think about how much time you spend sitting in a car. If you add let's say 20%. If you add 20% over the course of a year, that's a significant amount of time, right? And productivity in the economy in a wider scope, right? So if the ridership increased in proportion, it would mean 100K per day would increase to 119K. No, you're doing the math wrong. No, that's not how it works. No, that's not how it works. That math is a bit off, I think. But even that doesn't quite work out, since the highest ridership part of the route in the west, which is already being tunneled, while the difference in average speed is due mainly to the street running stretch in the east. I'm not sure. You know what? We can't see what's going on underneath the tunnel. So we have no idea how fast it's going in the tunnel. I don't think it's going faster in the tunnel. I don't see why. I don't see why it would be going faster in the tunnel than on the street surface. That makes no sense. It's the same track. So the part of the service with the most ridership will already be as fast as the subway, since it will be a subway that just happens to use a different train design. So there's no reason to suggest that ridership would be significantly different if it were a subway. Okay, so it's a bit of a nuance there, right? So you're assuming that because of it being faster, it will attract more ridership, and to some extent that is the case, but really not entirely. If there's going to be more population, there will be more ridership. Okay, so let's say that when it opens, it's destined to carry 100,000 people. Now let's say that population along Eglinton doubles. Okay, it's fair to make the leap that then ridership will also double to 200,000 people, and that's what that's what my assumption was with that, and I don't think that that's off. Okay, but even that doesn't quite work out, since the highest. Okay, let me just see where I was here. Okay, so the final issue, that the comparison should not have been limited comparing LRT to a BRT or full subway, since neither are good options for the route. There isn't enough room for dedicated BRT lanes on part of the route, and if there's room for an LRT, then there's room for a BRT. Right? Okay, so anyways, even if there had been, even if it had full traffic signal priority, it would still be slower. And ridership projections, again, it would have been the speed wouldn't have made much difference with whether it was BRT or LRT. I mean, it would have been easier to just put in our BRT. I mean, look at what they did in, where is it? Viva Transit did up in Vaughan and Richmond Hill. Right? I mean, it works absolutely fine. So anyways, moving on. Next comments. Kisai Yuki. Would a subway have been cheaper? No. Maybe not. But a grade separated transit project is always better than one with a grade crossing. Absolutely true. The second you start building tunnels for an LRT, you should have built a subway in the first place. There is a lot of truth to that, isn't there? There just is a lot of truth to that. So next, Canada. So public transport shouldn't be looked at as a business that needs to break even. No, but it should be not assumed either that money is unlimited, right? The reason I turn this into a business case is because you have to look at overall efficiency, right? Government is not a for-profit business, but government kind of needs to still operate like a not-for-profit business, since money is not unlimited. There's only one taxpayer, right? So money is not unlimited for a business or for government, and there's a reason there's budgets, and there's a reason there's plans. Otherwise, why should we have them? This is built by tax money. This is for the commuters who use it for convenience. Well, not necessarily. Well, hang on a second. That's not necessarily true. Not everybody uses it for convenience. I would say that the greater majority of people using the line are using it out of necessity, right? Some people will switch to using transit over using their vehicles, which is fantastic. Great, but most of the people using transit are using it out of necessity. They're going to school, they're going shopping, they're going to work. I would really push back against that it's all for convenience. Nothing of any value will be built as public infrastructure if the aim is to financially break even. No, the aim is not to financially break even. The aim would be for it to be efficient, right? There is a point at which you do run out of money. This should never be run by tax revenue. This should be run by tax revenue, not its own revenue. Well, yes, but tax revenue also comes from somewhere now, doesn't it? Duploman 0003. I hope that it's at least open soon. Well, yes, don't we all? TMB PK writes, been saying this from day one. Either build a subway or go cheap with BRT. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm saying in the video. Anything in between is pointless in a large city like Toronto. LRTs are for smaller cities like Waterloo, Hamilton, Edmonton, Calgary. Yes, I completely agree. Honestly, Eglinton is just a streetcar with fancy stations at this point. Yes. Exactly what I've been saying. They were better off just replacing St. Clair, and that would have been done with the same job. Now look at the mess the city is in. The day it opens, it'll be over capacity with 6 months, within 6 months, and having issues with overcrowded trains. Then what are they going to do? Well, yeah, exactly. The thing people don't understand is that while Toronto indeed has become the 4th largest city in North America, it reached this position far faster than the minds of its leaders could register it. Yes, that is very true as well. Yeah. Cities grow and mature with their population. You can tell how the City Council of New York and Los Angeles behave. Well, I don't know. Maybe New York is a better example than Los Angeles, but I don't know if either one's a great example, to be honest. They know they're a large city and behave like leaders of a large city. Well, I don't know how much of that is true, but Los Angeles doesn't have as great of a transit network as we have in Toronto. I think that Los Angeles is a much more car-centric city than Toronto is. New York has a much better transit system, and I would say that that would be more true for New York than Toronto. Patrick Air 4444 writes, the Edmonton LRT is already running. Okay, great. P. Wingert 1966, centuries, not decades. Better still, generations, multiple generations of families. This almost needs to be measured in eons. Okay. All right. Thanks for your comment. Triangle in 22. 128 years to make its money back. From what I am seeing for Metrolinx, it might not open this year. Yeah, we're still counting. We're still counting to how much we're going to be owing on this project. DC Focal, the land transfer tax and property tax is what pays for this land eventually. Yes, and nobody has a problem with that. Nobody's arguing that that's a bad thing. I mean, obviously, that is going to happen, and we accept that, and we're totally okay with that. But this line is just completely out of whack financially. Sticky North writes, sorry, not sorry, but BRTs are a fool's errand other than a temporary bridge until they are replaced by trains. They never ever hit ridership targets and often lack things like proper signal priority or proper grade separation. Ottawa aside, and of course, you buy cheap, you buy twice. Yeah, that's true. Listen, I believe you get what you pay for, but this, you know, let's keep it real here, though. I mean, up to what point, though? Right? At what point is something just not worth it anymore? At what point is something just way too much? And I'm just not... I believe in you get what you pay for, but that's exactly my point, is I don't think that we're getting what we're paying for here. Once you lay rail, you have a sense of certainty not only about the service in the short term, but also that it's a neighborhood anchor. Yes, to some degree, that's true of BRT. However, it's always a poor man's version that is a letdown for both passengers and taxpayers. Not once has an Edmontonian have I thought, gee, let's close down this LRT line and replace it with a bus. Not once. Roads and buses will never ever be as smooth as steel rail vehicles will be by their very nature. Case closed. Well, so the mode of transit and its application is what's in question here, and the situation in Edmonton is very different than the situation in Toronto. What could be viable in Edmonton, like the previous comment up there said, how there's certain cities where a tram or an LRT, well, let's face it, it's the same thing, where those vehicles are well applicable in that situation, and it's just that in this situation it's just not applicable, and we're going to find that out, I believe. So East of Victoria Park writes, I like how it was designed for wealth to match service quality. A lot of historical revisionism will happen, but look at what was said prior to its construction and see how much bad faith terrible takes. Yeah, very true. Yeah, I think we reached consensus about what we think about the Eglinton LRT. I think there's no question about it. I mean, the facts are what they are about it. All right, so let's go to the next video. What's next on the docket here? So we have we just did Eglinton LRT. Next, we're going to take a look at the GO Transit expansion. Let's take a look at this video. Let me put it on loop. There we go. All right, and let me back this up. Let's go here, and we got the volume off. I do. Got to wait for that commercial, and then I'll scroll down and let's take a look at the comments on this video. There we go. Okay, so all right, fantastic. So first comment is defamatory. Let's take a look here. So this video, let me just take a look at, let me just refresh my memory here. So go transit expansion by diverting freight trains. Right. So this is the video about where the province is looking at expanding GO train service along more freight corridors in the city. Again, that's just a proposal. They're, doing a study. They're doing a study, right? Okay. So just to recap what the video is about and to refresh my memory. Okay. So Famatory writes, in addition to studying building the missing link, we should also be studying the cost of adding additional tracks and grade separations along existing right-of-ways to separate passenger and freight traffic. Yes, that's already being looked at, and it's already being done on some corridors as far as I know. On one hand, it's more raw material. On the other, it's less land acquisition. It's less land acquisition and environmental study to worry about. While the dream of the Midtown line seems extremely cool, it's a lot longer of a timeline than projects like the Doncaster Diamond or adding 2 more tracks to the Milton line or adding a flyover to the Kitchener line. Hang on, I lost my footing there. So it's it seems extremely cool. It's a lot longer of a timeline than projects like that. Yeah, in some cases it can be. That is true. We'll have to see. I mean, I think it's just more complicated than it sounds in some ways. If anyone, so Matt W9667 writes, if anyone is serious about improving public transit, they need to put a lid on growth anywhere within 50 kilometers of Bay Street. There's a lot of truth to that. We've really centered transportation all around Union, and I think that's, it may have not been a mistake back in the day. I mean, Union was always a transit hub in Toronto, and so that's why that happened, and that was no mistake back then. But I think we've come to the point where we've just exceeded the limits of that station. We need to get away from the idea of connecting everything to and from Union Station. I think that we're kind of moving in that direction where we're moving away from that idea. I mean, if you look at every single Go line route, everything starts in everything, like the terminus of every single line is Union Station, right? So, anyways, yeah. So going on with the comment here. So start developing away from Toronto. Yes, absolutely agree. So we have multiple hubs instead of just one. Absolutely true. Then trains will not only run in both directions, but will actually have passengers in both directions. Yes. There's an idea. That's exactly what we should be doing. There are 2 abandoned rail corridors through the Ottawa Valley by CN and CPKC that used to run transcontinental. Sorry, by the way, the person that wrote this comment is Alice Lovelock, 4648. So that used to run transcontinental trains that bypass Toronto, Montreal to Sudbury, essentially. Maybe if one of those corridors was reinstated, less freight would be in Toronto, freeing up track space for Metrolinx. Maybe the Ford admin and the feds could incentivize CN and CPKC to build a new shared line through the Ottawa Valley to relieve Toronto congestion. Yeah, that isn't. I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, I think that we really need to move into a world where the rail tracks are better shared. And I think that that's definitely going to involve the cooperation of the federal government. We're really lacking in rail infrastructure for passengers, for passenger rail, just really across the entire country. So WT Man writes, CN and CP are federally regulated railways. Yes, they are. That's one of the problems. We have this provincial federal thing going on there again. They can use that to say no to anything coming from the province that doesn't suit them. It's very true there's politics involved, right? Very true that there's politics involved. The province offers them a sweet deal that is too good to turn down, or 2, the province gets some allies in the federal government to push for regulations that force CN and CP to play ball with the province. Yes, that's what's needed. The beauty of the second option is that it could have broader benefits, including improved service on Via trains. Well, that's another service that's completely underutilized, is the Via trains. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing with Via train. The service seems to be down. The prices are up. I don't know why we're not improving service with Via Rail. It seems like it's kind of stuck in time back in the 50s and 60s of when it was first created. Not much expansion has happened since then with Via Rail, and that's a problem. And then when Go Transit tries to do something to expand service, then the freight rail and the feds step in the way. Yeah, it is a problem. No, not that. Paul writes, if you want good rail connections, you need tracks. If it's expensive, so be it. You have them forever. Well, yes and no. I'll explain. If it's so, first of all, it's not that expensive, and you do kind of have them forever. Tracks still do need to be maintained, but they're not as expensive. Laying down rail is not as expensive as like a subway, for example, or an LRT. Okay, but it's fairly inexpensive relatively. Triangle 22 writes, it would be a no-brainer, but it does sound expensive. Probably will become a study that regrettably gets eventually put on a shelf to gather dust. You know what? I will say this. For all the things we complain about and all the criticisms that we can lay at the Ford government's feet, the one thing that the Ford government has been really good at is expanding Go Rail service. And they've done that with new trains, more service. I think that Doug Ford and Metrolinx has done more for Go Transit, specifically the trains that I've seen in any time that I could remember in recent memory. Anyways, I don't remember any other government doing as much as they have for it. So I mean, that's good on them. I mean, credit where credit is due, right? Jack Lattersall 9457 writes, the missing link is primarily about increasing service on the Kitchener and Milton line. The one Go line basically ignored by Go expansion. It's not being ignored by Go expansion. Again, we have the issue of it being federal, so it's not being ignored. The province has been pushing to double line both Kitchener. I don't remember now. If somebody let me know in the comments, but Kitchener might be double lined or might not be. I don't really remember. Milton line isn't, as far as I know, but I know that they're working on that. The Barrie and Stouffville line is wholly Metrolinx property, thank God. Already the only thing standing in the way of more frequent electric train services building it. Engineering work is ongoing as of right now. Yes, that is true. They are electrifying those two lines. Personally, I'm not convinced the missing link is a feasible approach because it requires getting two competent private companies, CN and CPKC, to cooperate and share a new line built for them. Again, we come back to the issue. We come back to the same issue, which is that, well, of course, CN and CPKC are going to hold on to their infrastructure. Of course, they're going to hold on to their business. This is not going to be solved by going to CN and begging them to let them use the rail tracks, right? This is going to come down to government and federal regulation. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not going to read the rest of this. It's just too long, but thank you for the comment. I do appreciate it. Demetrio Safaropoulos 799 writes, I just hope that whatever they choose will end up making the Milton line all day. I'm sick of the fanfare about one new train in the morning and one more in the evening. That's very true. What they've done is they've kind of snuck in one train here and there, and they're, that's their service improvement. And it's not really Go Transit's fault. Again, it's the railways. But again, it just goes to show that they've been trying to do what they can be doing at the provincial level with Go Transit. And it's really, just because of restrictions, because of other trains that are using the tracks. So it's not because Go doesn't have the trains to put them on the tracks, okay? If it was up to Go and if it was their tracks, they'd be running two-way service all day on every line, I think. Henry Van Bemel, writes, another missing link is to run a line through Bolton to Alliston. Yeah, that's been mentioned before. It's actually a good idea. It's a gap between Milton and Georgetown, Milton/Georgetown and the Barrie line. Yes, to some extent. To some extent, yes. It's a little bit far out. What we need is something closer to the city, I think. That runs east and west, because our issue here is mainly east and west connection. Nobody has any problem going north and south in the city. We have a problem getting from east to west in the city. But I mean, while that can be done, I don't think that's where I'd be. If I was the one in charge of deciding where the money goes, I don't think that's where I'd be putting it. Unless there was really good connection between Milton and Barrie going north and south, then it would make sense, because you would need that then to kind of supplement it. Okay, so Olgit 1497 writes, why is GO Transit focused on expansion when it should be focused on moving diesel-powered trains to electric, like the large majority of public transit in Europe and the Scandinavian countries? So they are doing that. They are electrifying the lines, and they are moving to more efficient locomotives. They've already started doing that. Start with the Lakeshore line. Well, they are doing that. That's what they're starting with. They're starting with the Lakeshore line and putting more efficient trains and locomotives on that. Gordon Los 2822 writes, there are always naysayers for whatever reason. The status quo is not feasible. You need to start at least somewhere. Yes, true, and that is happening with a lot of things. Couldn't agree more. Running Riot 9814 writes, this sounds promising, but it's a little convenient that Dougie asked for this study just ahead of an election announcement. Again, cynical and deservingly so, because Doug Ford has really been a retail politician. But again, I think that that the Ford administration has really pushed forward with a lot of GO Transit expansion plans from the day he stepped into office. AOLP writes, electric trains are quicker and faster. Electrifying the system would be a giant leap for mankind. Sorry, the region. Yeah, no, completely true. Completely true, and they're moving in that direction. Okay, so that's going to conclude this live stream and me reacting to your comments. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know in the comments how you like the format. If you like this this kind of format where I do a stream reacting to your comments. And that'll be it for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.